Most people have no idea that some of the most powerful healing meals ever eaten were not designed by modern nutritionists manufactured by supplement companies or discovered in research labs with million-dollar budgets. They were written down thousands of years ago, long before food was reduced to macros, calories, labels, and marketing language. Ancient people were already building meals that strengthened the body, stabilized energy, supported digestion, improved resilience, and carried people through hard climates, hard labor illness, and long seasons of scarcity. And in the biblical world, those meals were not random. They were built from foods that appeared over and over again in scripture, in households, in wilderness, journeys, in feasts, in famine, in worship, in agriculture, and in the daily rhythm of survival. They were not just convenient, they were dependable. They were repeated because they worked. That is the piece the modern world keeps missing. When a civilization uses the same ingredients for centuries, when the same foods keep showing up in stories, rituals, marketplaces, family tables, and moments of physical recovery, that is not an accident. That is pattern recognition stretched over generations. And now, when modern nutritional science studies many of those same foods, it keeps finding something almost unsettling in its consistency. The old world was paying far closer attention than we usually give it credit for. So today we are breaking down 10 biblical meals, not just ingredients, but actual combinations that reveal how astonishingly intelligent ancient food traditions really were. Stay with us, because number 4 on this list combines ingredients that researchers now recognize as a remarkably effective pairing for metabolism, digestion, and cardiovascular support. And number 1, the final meal comes straight out of Deuteronomy, a list of 7 foods so nutritionally complete, so synergistic, and so balanced that modern science still struggles to explain how ancient people assembled it so perfectly without ever seeing a single lab report. 10 meals, thousands of years of wisdom, and one enormous reminder the gap between what heals the body and what fills a grocery aisle may be much wider than most people realize. Let's begin. Number 10. Cucumber mint and goat yogurt bowl, the cooling meal that rebuilt the gut. Let's start quietly, because one of the biggest mistakes people make when they think about healing foods is assuming they have to be dramatic. Bitter tonics, rare herbs, expensive oils, exotic berries from impossible places. But some of the most medicinal meals in the ancient world were simple cooling and deeply practical. In Numbers 11, when the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness and grieving the foods they left behind in Egypt, cucumbers are among the foods they mention. That detail is easy to skip past, but it tells you a lot. In a hot climate, cucumbers were not decorative produce, they were survival food. At more than 95%, water cucumbers offer hydration in a form the body can absorb gradually. In a region where heat, dryness, and dehydration were not occasional inconveniences but daily realities, a food like that mattered. But cucumbers do more than carry water. They also provide vitamin K silica and compounds associated with cooling inflammation and supporting connective tissue. Now pair those cucumbers with fermented goat yogurt, and suddenly this simple bowl becomes something much more sophisticated. Goat milk differs from most modern commercial cow dairy in important ways. Its protein structure tends to be gentler, its fat globules smaller, and many people find it easier to digest. When it is fermented into yogurt, it becomes a living food rich in beneficial bacteria that support the gut lining, help regulate immune responses, and produce compounds that calm intestinal irritation. Then add mint. Mint is not there just to brighten the flavor. Ancient people used mint because it changed how the body felt after eating. It relaxes the digestive tract, reduces spasms, eases bloating, cools the palate, and helps the nervous system come down out of stress. That means this bowl does several things at once. It hydrates the body. It cools the system. It supports digestion. It restores the gut. And it calms a body that has been overheated, overworked, or over-irritated. That is why meals like this survive. Not because they are flashy, because they are useful. The people who ate this in hot climates did not need a nutrition label to understand what it was doing. They felt the difference directly. And once a meal proves itself like that, it tends to stay in the culture for a very long time. Number 9. Dates stuffed with nuts. The desert survival food that turned fast energy into lasting energy. If there is one fruit that the biblical world clearly understood on a deep, practical level, it is the date. The date palm appears again and again across biblical and ancient Near Eastern life because it was one of the most efficient foods ever cultivated for survival in harsh environments. Dates are dense, sweet, portable, and stable. They travel well. They keep well. They deliver energy quickly. And they carry minerals the body actually needs when living under physical stress. That alone would make them valuable. But what makes dates truly remarkable is that they are not just sugar. They bring potassium, magnesium, copper, manganese, fiber, and B vitamins in a compact form that the body can use almost immediately. They are one of the clearest examples of the ancient world understanding that a good travel food had to do more than taste sweet. It had to sustain movement, preserve strength, and keep people functioning under extreme conditions. Modern research has even found that dates may support labor in late pregnancy, shortening labor duration, and improving readiness for delivery in some controlled trials. That means one of the most traditional foods in the ancient world also carries a measurable relationship to one of the oldest and most physically demanding human experiences. Now stuff those dates with nuts and everything changes, because dates on their own are rapid fuel. Dates with nuts become stable fuel. Almonds bring vitamin E, magnesium, and healthy fats. Walnuts add omega-3 fatty acids and deepen satiety. Pistachios contribute carotenoids, protein, potassium, and a fascinating microbiome effect that researchers have taken seriously in recent years. The fat, protein, and fiber of the nuts slow the sugars in the dates, smoothing out their energy curve and turning what could have been a quick burst into something much more sustained. That matters enormously. It means this combination is not just sweet, it is strategic, and you can suddenly understand why traditions like breaking a fast with dates endured for so long. The body can absorb them gently after deprivation, and when paired with nutrient-dense nuts, they become one of the most intelligent portable foods in the ancient world. This is not a snack in the modern throwaway sense of the word. It is compact human engineering through food. Number 8. Grapes, goat cheese. Olives and herbs, the simple plate that works like a system. At first glance, this looks like a casual plate. A few grapes, some goat cheese, olives, herbs, the kind of thing modern people might dismiss as a snack board or appetizer. But that would completely miss what is happening here. Grapes carry enormous symbolic weight in Scripture. The vine is linked to covenant abundance, identity, joy, and spiritual life. That alone would make grapes important. But nutritionally, whole grapes are far more impressive than most people realize, especially when eaten with their skins intact. Their skins and seeds contain protective compounds that modern researchers study for cardiovascular support, cellular resilience, and healthy aging. Add their potassium, fiber, and naturally balanced sweetness, and grapes become something much more functional than dessert fruit. Then comes the goat cheese. Fresh or aged goat cheese concentrates the value of goat milk into a form that delivers protein, minerals, beneficial fats, and when fermented, living bacteria that support gut health. Ancient people were not blindly combining fruit and cheese because it tasted good. They were building meals from foods that were easy to digest, rich in nourishment, and restorative over time. Now add olives and herbs. Olives bring their anti-inflammatory fats and polyphenol compounds. Herbs like mint, coriander, or hyssop layer in aromatic oils and antimicrobial benefits, while also helping digestion and improving how the meal sits in the body. What makes this plate remarkable is not that any one piece is magical. It is the way the parts reinforce each other. The fruit brings antioxidants. The cheese brings protein and microbial value. The olives bring fat and anti-inflammatory support. The herbs deepen digestion and microbial control. It takes 5 minutes to assemble, but it reflects thousands of years of observation. Meals like this reveal one of the deepest truths in biblical food culture. Healing meals were often elegant because they were simple, not because they were complicated. Number 7. Garlic and herb lentil soup. The immune protocol hiding in a comfort food. If you wanted to design a biblical meal that supported the immune system, the cardiovascular system, digestion, and daily resilience all at once, you would end up with something that looked very close to garlic and herb lentil soup. Lentils are one of the most enduring foods in the ancient Near East for a reason. They are rich in plant protein, full of fiber, and capable of delivering steady energy without creating the kind of glucose spike modern refined foods generate. They feed the microbiome, improve satiety, and provide minerals that support strength and recovery over time, but then you add garlic, and the whole thing moves into another category. Garlic is one of the most broadly respected medicinal foods in history. When crushed or chopped, it forms a lysine compound with documented antimicrobial action across a wide range of pathogens. Modern research has explored garlic's relationship to immune resilience, blood pressure, blood lipids, liver support, and respiratory health. Ancient people did not know the word elysian. They knew outcomes. They knew households that used garlic regularly stayed stronger. They knew it mattered enough to record and repeat. And when Egyptian medical documents list garlic repeatedly in treatment contexts, that is not superstition. That is accumulated empirical trust. Now add cumin and coriander. Cumin stimulates digestive enzymes and helps the body process heavier foods more effectively. Coriander calms the gut, smooths digestion, and contributes its own traditional antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory reputation. Finish the soup with real olive oil, and suddenly the fat-soluble compounds in the meal become more bioavailable, while the whole bowl gains another layer of anti-inflammatory depth. That is the genius of this meal. It warms, it nourishes, it fortifies, it restores. And because it is a soup, it does all of that in a form the body can handle, even when energy is low, digestion is weak, or recovery is needed. This is what ancient medicinal eating looked like at its best. Not isolated ingredients, systems disguised as meals. Number 6. Chickpea and olive salad. The kind of food that only survives for 10,000 years if it works. There are some foods that appear in Scripture because of symbolism, and then there are foods that appear in history because human beings kept eating them every day for millennia and refused to stop. Chickpeas belong to the second category. They may not have the dramatic symbolism of grapes or lamb, but they have something just as important: endurance. Foods do not remain staples for thousands of years unless they solve very practical problems extremely well. Chickpeas provide stable carbohydrates, fiber-resistant starch, protein, and minerals in a combination that supports blood sugar control, microbial diversity, and long-lasting satiety. In modern terms, they are exactly the kind of food people are rediscovering after decades of being pushed toward ultra-processed options. Now put them in a simple salad with good olive oil and herbs. Immediately the whole meal becomes an anti-inflammatory, gut-supportive, cardiovascular-friendly daily foundation. The chickpeas deliver stable fuel. The olive oil reduces inflammatory burden and improves nutrient absorption. The herbs support digestion, microbial balance, and flavor without relying on industrial additives. This is where the biblical world starts to look astonishingly modern, or maybe where the modern world starts to look like it forgot something obvious. Because the strength of this meal is not novelty, it is repetition. A food like this could be eaten regularly for years. It is affordable, filling, supportive to the gut, metabolically stable, and easy to build into life. That matters far more than occasional superfood moments that come and go with fashion. Modern longevity research often points back to legumes as one of the strongest common dietary patterns in healthy aging populations. The ancient world did not need a meta-analysis to know that. They had a table. Number 5. Roasted lamb with dates and herbs, the feast that did more than celebrate. In Scripture, lamb is one of the most powerful foods symbolically. Passover turns on it. Sacrifice is tied to it. Deliverance is remembered through it. But reducing lamb to symbolism misses how important it was nutritionally in a physically demanding world. Lamb is one of the most restorative foods available in a traditional diet. It provides highly bioavailable iron, zinc, B12, B6, riboflavin, and complete protein in forms the body can readily use. For people recovering from blood loss, hard labor illness, stress, long travel, or nutritional depletion, this mattered enormously. Lamb did not just fill the stomach, it rebuilt the person. Now add dates and herbs. The dates are not there for decoration or sweetness alone. They provide quick energy mineral support, fiber and fruit acids that complement the richness of the meat and may improve the overall handling of the meal. The herbs rosemary, thyme, hyssop do something equally important. They help rich food digest more cleanly while layering in aromatic compounds that ancient cooks repeatedly valued for their preserving and antimicrobial qualities. What you end up with is not just a ceremonial dish, it is a recovery meal, a rebuilding meal, a strengthening meal, a meal for someone who has been emptied out. That is one reason feast foods matter so much in traditional cultures. They are not always indulgence. Sometimes they are recalibration, a way of bringing a person back to strength after strain. When you understand lamb that way, biblical tables start to look less symbolic and much more physiologically intelligent. Number 4. Barley bread with olive oil, the daily bread that was secretly a chronic disease. Defense system, modern people tend to think of bread as filler, cheap carbohydrates, something to avoid or something to tolerate. But biblical bread was not industrial bread. And that distinction changes everything. When the Gospels describe barley loaves, they are describing a grain the ancient world depended on heavily. Barley was the food of workers, travelers, fishermen, and laborers, ordinary people who needed food that could sustain them steadily over long periods of effort. And barley is astonishingly good at that. Its beta-glucan fiber helps stabilize blood sugar, lower LDL cholesterol, feed beneficial bacteria, and improve post-meal metabolic response. In modern terms, it is the kind of grain that counters exactly the conditions many people are now suffering from: insulin instability, inflammatory burden, and cardiovascular strain. But the olive oil is what pushes this meal over the edge. Extra virgin olive oil brings polyphenols and anti-inflammatory compounds so potent that researchers have compared one of them to ibuprofen in how it influences inflammatory pathways. Combined with the dense, fiber-rich barley bread, olive oil turns a humble daily food into something metabolically protective on multiple levels. And that is the real power of this meal. It was daily. Not taken occasionally, not marketed as medicine, not reserved for elites. This was foundational eating. And when a protective food becomes daily food, the effects compound over a lifetime in ways modern people often underestimate. The heart benefits, blood sugar benefits, the gut benefits, inflammation stays lower, energy becomes steadier. All from bread and oil, except not just bread and oil, barley and olive oil, which is an entirely different category. Number 3. Pomegranate and barley grain bowl, the temple fruit meal that speaks to the heart. Pomegranates carried symbolic weight in the ancient world because people repeatedly saw them as signs of life, abundance, fruitfulness, and beauty. But symbolism does not usually survive unless it rests on something deeper. Modern research has shown pomegranates to be one of the most biochemically interesting fruits in the world, rich in compounds that influence inflammation, oxidation, vascular health, and possibly long-term protective pathways associated with healthy aging. Now pair those pomegranate seeds with barley, and you create something astonishingly coherent. Barley brings beta-glucan slow glucose handling cholesterol support and gut benefit. Pomegranate brings vascular protection, antioxidant density, and anti-inflammatory depth. Add herbs, olive oil, and perhaps a little walnut or feta, and suddenly the meal becomes a layered intervention for the heart arteries, gut, and cellular environment. And yet, to the ancient eye, it would have looked like lunch. That may be the most humbling thing about biblical food wisdom. Its intelligence hides in normality. A pomegranate bowl is not dramatic. It is just quietly structurally excellent. The kind of meal that looks beautiful, tastes bright, and works on the body at levels far deeper than the tongue alone can detect. That is what sacred food often is in traditional cultures. Not abstract symbolism. Embodied pattern recognition. Number 2. Figs and almonds, the combination that moves between healing and symbol. This may be the most elegant food pairing on the list. Figs bring an extraordinary combination of fiber minerals, gut support, natural sweetness, and ancient medicinal reputation. In Scripture, they cross the line from food into direct treatment through the story of Hezekiah, where a fig application is prescribed for a severe condition. Almonds bring density, stability, and protection. They provide vitamin E, magnesium, healthy fats, protein, and satiety in a form so valuable, the biblical world used almond blossoms and almonds themselves in sacred imagery. And when these two are combined, the result is deceptively powerful. The figs contribute rapid, usable nourishment, digestive support, and mineral richness. The almonds slow. The absorption deepen the satiety, protect cell membranes through vitamin E, and create a much more complete nutritional package than either ingredient alone. This is the kind of food pairing that reveals how the ancient world thought. Not in isolated nutrients, in complementary wholes, something soft paired with something dense, something sweet paired with something stabilizing, something restorative paired with something protective. That is nutritional intelligence at a very high level. And the fact that both figs and almonds carry sacred and narrative significance only deepens the picture. The biblical world was not choosing symbols disconnected from physical life. It was choosing images from foods that already mattered profoundly to human experience. Number 1. The 7 Sacred Foods Feast Bowl, the Deuteronomy meal that still stuns modern science. And here we arrive at the meal that changes how you read all the others. In Deuteronomy 8:8-7, foods are named together: wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. For centuries, readers saw this list as a sign of agricultural abundance, and that reading is true. But when you examine those foods nutritionally as a system, the list becomes something far more astonishing. Together, those 7 foods form one of the most complete traditional meal frameworks imaginable. The grains provide structure, B vitamins, energy, and protein. The grapes contribute protective compounds associated with cardiovascular and cellular resilience. The figs provide minerals and soluble fiber. The pomegranates bring anti-inflammatory and antioxidant density. The olives deliver vitamin E, anti-inflammatory fats, and the lipid matrix needed to absorb surrounding fat-soluble nutrients. The dates provide fast energy, potassium, fiber, and broad support for endurance. And what makes the whole thing so extraordinary is that the foods fill each other's gaps. The grains anchor the meal. The fruits deepen micronutrient diversity. The olives unlock absorption. The system becomes larger than the parts. This is the meal where the ancient world starts to look almost impossibly observant. Build it as a feast bowl, whole grains as the base, grapes and sliced figs throughout pomegranate seeds across the top, whole olives layered in dates on the side, and generous real extra virgin olive oil poured over everything. Then step back and see what you are looking at. Not just a bowl, not just a biblical reference, but a pattern of eating so complete, so structurally intelligent, and so balanced that modern specialists in heart health, gut health, inflammation, and longevity all keep circling back to the same conclusion: this works. The people of the biblical world did not need to know biochemical names. They observed what sustained energy, what strengthened families, what traveled well, what restored after hardship, and what allowed human beings to live with more resilience in demanding environments. That is what makes the Deuteronomy list so powerful. It is not just agricultural poetry. It is a blueprint for embodied wisdom. 10 meals, each one different in texture, rhythm, and purpose. Some cool and restore, some warm and fortify, some rebuild after depletion, some calm the gut, some support the immune system, some quietly defend the heart and metabolism day after day. But all of them point to the same conclusion: the ancient world was not primitive. It was observant. It watched what food did to labor, to illness, to childbirth, to strength, to digestion, to recovery, to mood, to stamina, to long years of survival in demanding conditions. And from that observation it built meals. That is the part modern people often miss. Not ingredients alone. Meals, patterns, combinations repeated over time. That is where healing lived. So here is the challenge. Pick one of these meals and make it this week. Not the processed imitation. Not the shortcut version with broken ingredients. The real version. Use good olive oil. Use whole foods. Use real herbs. Build it honestly. Then do what the ancient world did. Pay attention. How do you feel after eating it? How does your digestion respond? How does your energy hold? How does your body carry the meal? If this opened something up for you, tell me in the comments which one you would start with first. Would it be the cooling cucumber mint and goat yogurt bowl, the garlic lentil soup, the barley bread with olive oil, the figs and almonds, or the full 7 sacred foods feast bowl from Deuteronomy? And if you got value from this, subscribe and stay close. Because the deeper you go into biblical food, the more obvious it becomes that what we call modern nutrition is often just a delayed rediscovery of truths human beings were already living by a very long time ago.